I literally just flew it back into the UK from North Africa in the last few hours and made it to this event. That's how much I love maize. So, but also bear with me if I seem a little tired. So I was asked to come today to speak about building a movement for change and my own experiences, my journey and inspirations, my story. So I came to this country when I was 7 years old, and my parents had a very difficult time, to say the least, from financial to cultural barriers, because we left Algeria quite abruptly during the civil war, and my father had refused to seek asylum, given that it would mean not only not being allowed to visit my country for many years, but also he wouldn't have it on record that we were fleeing our own land. Despite all of this, my parents invested everything in mine and my sister's education. They made more sacrifices than we could ever imagine, because they believed that education would be the source of our emancipation, particularly as women of the global South. I grew up in Birmingham, which is one of the most diverse cities in the UK, as many of you must know. And I'd expected the university to reflect that, but boy, was I wrong. Within my first semester, I was having breakdowns, unable to really connect neither to the content of my studies nor to my fellow students. And to make matters worse, I became the spokesperson for the 80% of the world. So given I was the only non-white person in most of my lectures and seminars, I'd therefore be expected to speak on behalf of anyone who wasn't of European descent. So, you know, a Hindu Indian man, a South American Catholic woman, you name it, I could speak on their behalf. And of course, on account of my faith, I was also interrogated and just constantly questioned about Islam, with political events being the backdrop of that context. The main thing really that has driven me over the years and continues to is the strong sense of responsibility. From a young age, growing up in Algeria, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by stories of my people's fight for liberation against French colonial occupation. These stories only led me to develop a sense of analysis for our current reality, to understand that the fight is far from over, and it is necessary that we continue on the path of struggle, not only out of respect for our elders and our ancestors who sacrificed their lives, but also for the sake of dismantling all forms of oppression for ourselves and for those coming up after us. The main political event which really led me to take action and get more heavily politically involved was Operation Cast Lead, so the attacks on Gaza in 2008-2009, as well as the very difficult experiences of a racist academic space which left me feeling inadequate and unable to really ever meet the intelligence required to study at a Russell Group university. So from Palestinian solidarity, I went on to wider anti-racism and anti-colonialism campaigns, to finally finding a home in Black self-organization, namely the National Union of Students Black Students Campaign. For those of you who don't know about us, the Black Students Campaign represents over 1 million students of African, Asian, Arab, Caribbean, and South American descent from further and higher education. We work on increasing Black representation across society for a free and decolonized education against all forms of racism, Western intervention, and imperialism of our homelands, and ultimately international peace and justice. As people of the global South, self-organization is still incredibly important in the fight for equality, even 500 years after slavery began, and decades still since the fall of Western empires, which left our people and our lands in ruins. The reasons for racism, ongoing Western interventions, and destruction of our homelands, and all structural oppression are inextricably linked to those chapters of history which we must speak about in order to truly heal. It is in understanding what was and how it affected us that we not only develop the solutions to our oppression, but also make sure that they are everlasting. The fight for equality, or rather liberation, as we call it, as we prefer to call it, allows us to come together and remember and discover aspects of our history which have sadly either been revised out of what the Western world has presented to us as history, or rendered to mythological status, so that our ancestors' contributions, inventions, and accomplishments are completely disregarded and even denied. The process of struggle enables us to strengthen our identities and obtain a form of empowerment quite unlike any other. And for many of us, we discover that we are far more than our oppression. The Black Students Campaign, whose foundations are Black liberation, since its creation has been, ironically, the black sheep of the student movement. Always the first to be attacked, under-supported, under-resourced, but over the years, this has only strengthened us and developed activists and leaders across our communities. This last year, again, the attacks on Gaza over the summer meant that despite only being imposed for a short while, the Black Students Committee of 24 young people from across the UK mobilized, helped lead national demonstrations of over 100,000 people, but also showed the power of self-organization. It was literally that we decided enough and got organized to another level. We increased the number of Black national executive members to the highest ever in the organization's existence, and with this, the most progressive policy, which included supporting the boycott, divestment and sanctions against Israel, which has even invited criticism from Netanyahu himself, so we made it. Literally, you can check out his tweet about it. To getting the organization to adopt a strong and uncompromising opposition to the counter-terror and security bill, which threatens us all. The wins along the way have inspired countless young Black people, the most marginalized in society, to believe that they have the power and space in which to affect change. This is the result of collective grassroots efforts, and you can feel the wave of action nationally. But our responsibility now is to maintain it and to hopefully continue building it. Thank you.